Hello, you're back with me, Brian, and we're in my office. We're going to do a brief overview of all of these books on the table that have been cataloged by us here in the past week. This is a small selection of some of the highlights of books that we think are among some of the more interesting in terms of their bindings and condition and contents. I'll do a very brief overview so you can see the book being handled. In case it interests you, you'll be able to find it on our website by the numbers. This is B3649. It's the Book of Nature, 1828, stamped at the base of the spine here like so. Front joint is somewhat scuffed and rubbed and a little, just slightly tender, but the cover is still firmly attached. Both of them are, so that book is in still very nice condition. Here's a beautiful early 20th century French book in a lovely period binding. It's a large, heavy volume, profusely illustrated, as you see here, with endless diagrams, charts, photographs, line drawings, cross-sections. There are indexes within it. The range of topics is enormous: aviation, animals, war, architecture, engineering, buildings, architecture, trains, transportation, on and on. It's a wonderful book. The World as It Is, another wonderful, monumental book, 19th century, with beautiful color plates and maps within it. It is 1884 London, and as you see, it is over 1,000 pages. There are numerous full-page engravings. There are many of these color lithographed double-page maps by Bartholomew. There's Australia, and there are also some color lithographed plates scattered throughout. But this gives you just a rough idea of how the contents are. The book is basically clean. There's some minor small spotting or soiling in spots. Here is an image of African inhabitants here, and so on and on it goes. Okay. There is a small little split at the head of the spine here along the front joint, rear joint, but again, the covers are very firmly attached, so that book is sound. The next book is this Pope's Poems. Top edge is gilt, marbled covers, deckled edges, marbled end papers, old early book plate. Nice, clean, tight sound interior. 1897. And this book is B3619. We're going to list each of these numbers with the title in our video listing, so you'll be able to match them up in case you see something that interests you. This is a very lovely binding here, this gift type binding of the mid-19th century. There are a profusion of these very nice engraved plates all throughout, like so. You know, very well done, well printed, well nuanced images. There is to the plates some of this old light damp staining at the bottom edge, like so. It's always well outside the printed area, so it's just within the description. The title page is toned, but the binding itself is very pleasing indeed. It's embossed in the center here, elaborate gilt tooling, including on the edges and the turn-ins or the dentals, like so. Lovely binding. This is an interesting 1861 compendium of information about the United States. Every state and territory is listed. Statistics for the post office, the mint, public laws, all branches of the military. There's meteorology, pneumonia, oh, look at this. I just saw a Jewish calendar right here, a section on this, signs of the zodiac, on and on and on. There is some advertising at the rear, printed on yellow paper, like so. There's a chronicle of events. We also have an 1860, so we have two different years available at the moment. Here's a nice history of England in a nice leather binding, like so. 1928. It's got maps in it. Some of them are color, a couple are. a lot of maps, but many are black and white. And here's the contents, like so. Very detailed, extensive. Here's a list of all the maps that continues over to here. There are 36 of them. And here's how the book looks on the inside. Some of the maps fold out like this. Nice and clean and tight on the inside. The world in the Elizabethan era there, like so. And next we have this Santayana first edition in a leather binding, 20th century, mid-20th century, during World War II actually, 1944. And here we see the A, which is often needed for Scribner's first editions. Top edge is gilt, clean and sound. There's a small, tiny little, just a tiny little chip right here at the head. That's 3633. Here's a beautiful Milton's Poetical Works in a nice leather binding, a perfect sort of book to give as a gift. Ink inscription there. It is a signed stamped binding here by Oliver and Boyd. And we see here 1911, prior to the First World War, deckled edges, nice, clean, tight and sound, 3621. And here is a beautiful French book, a beautiful French binding, 19th century, marbled end paper, top edge gilt, deckled edges. This one here is inscribed from the author, right there, and the author is here, Lois, well, Bovin, and like so. This is a very nice, look at that. I love these sorts of antiquarian European and French bindings of this era, which is very early in the 19th century, sold by a bookseller. That's interesting. Scarce book. Nice marbled end papers. Remnants of a wax seal here. There must have been some sort of a book plate that the book was a prize. Interesting stamp there. Some chipping at the head. The joints are splitting. But both covers, as typical for European bindings of this era, are very strongly and well attached. Often, European bindings of this era are almost indestructible. They can survive all but a nuclear blast. Here's a wonderful 2-volume set. I've actually read some passages within this one as well, and they're quite interesting because they're stories that then have a moral, but they're quite entertaining. They're often almost quite funny, actually. And this is got marbled end papers, deckled edges. It's 2 volumes. The front joint is a bit scuffed and worn with some small flaking. The front cover is slightly tender, but still well attached. On both volumes, the covers are still firmly attached. Again, we see small little flakes. And there's an early book plate here of an owner. But in this second volume, curiously, just opens right up to the contents leaf like this. We've noted it in the description. So it's lacking its title page and the first list of up to chapter 25. But otherwise, the book is then complete. So it's still a very nice set. It's scarce. Here is a great 18th century binding. Cicero, very nice. There is some small old chipping and a little split there to the head of the spine. The covers are still well attached and firm. The contents are tight, very tight and sound. There's some toning, nothing offensive. You see it's mid-18th century. And there we go. It's a nice book. And the last book that we will show briefly here in this short video is this Iliad of Homer in Greek. It is a Phillips Exeter prize binding. There's the stamp of Phillips Exeter right there. There is some old damp staining to the covers, which is kind of easy to overlook, but you can sort of see it a little bit. The end papers are marbled. The top edge is gilt. The deckled edges here. There is a gift book plate. And it is stamped here by the Rose Bindery of Boston. So this was done in a very small number. It could be unique. and all in Greek. The paper's toned, but it's clean, tight, and sound. Still a very nice book. Scarce, a little bit of splitting, some small minor chipping, but a nice antiquarian book. And that is a brief overview. And if anything that you see on this table interests you, it is at this moment available now online from me, Brian DeMambro.